All right, welcome back to another exciting lesson with Mr. Colvin, sitting in your bedroom or watching this on your phone or in your parents' living room and listening to me lecture about things that you find boring. Hopefully today isn't too bad. This is where economics gets a little bit complex. We're going to talk in this mini unit about supply, demand, and pricing. And really what we're going to talk about is how do markets know how much should be made and what the price is? And we're going to start with demand because I think this is easiest for you guys to understand because you are consumers and consumers really deal with demand the most. Now, as we do this PowerPoint, I encourage you to draw any arrows that I draw. I encourage you, in addition, to draw any of the graphs and all of the graphs that I draw. You really should draw the graphs because that's what we're going to be working on. So demand. In other words, what do people want? What we first have to understand is how are things related. As something happens, a change, and this is what economics deal with. A primary change happens. What are the effects of that? What are the results of that change? And so we can say first that change is directly related. So something happens and it's directly related. In other words, as one thing goes up, if they're directly related, the other goes up. In other words, the arrows go in the same direction. And again, I strongly encourage you to draw these arrows. I know on my econ tests in college, I would always be writing, I'd have a scratch sheet of paper out, and I'd be writing out the question like a word problem, and I would be drawing arrows all over the place. So I made sure I could put it in a mathematical formula so I could understand it. Well, if things are directly related, we have to know that some things are going to be the opposite. And we call that inversely related, not indirectly, inversely related. And this should be pretty obvious then. The arrows go opposite. As one thing goes up, the other goes down. Now, don't think that directly related only deals with things going up. Directly related could also mean that as one thing goes down, the other thing goes down. Inversely related, as one thing goes down, the other goes up. Basically, remember that directly means they both go the same direction. Inversely means they are opposite. Here's our first graph. I would draw this graph. I wouldn't worry about putting the numbers there necessarily. I would just make sure that we have the price on the left going vertically, and I hope you guys can see my mouse, price going vertically, and my quantity going horizontally. What we should know is this. 0 is the point in the bottom left-hand corner. And this red line we see is our demand line. Now, demand is always a downward sloping line, and that's going to help us. Well, the law of demand states something pretty simple, and it's common sense. Price and quantity demanded are inversely related. Well, what does this mean exactly? Well, common sense when you go shopping. You will buy more of anything if the price is lower. In fact, you will buy stuff you don't want if the price is low enough. That's how people operate. You go to the store and you see something is cheaper than you expect, or it's normally a certain price. As that price goes down, we'll buy more. So how do we represent this on a graph? How do we show this on a graph? Okay. People will buy 0 goods at $9 each. See where the demand line connects? Right here. At the price of $9, that's what we're looking at the vertical axis, people will buy 0 goods. Now, what if we change the price to this point here? So we draw on a horizontal line. And this horizontal line connects at $3. Well, what we want to know is if people will buy nothing of this product at $9, how many will they buy if we change the price to $3? Well, we draw the horizontal line for 3, and then we draw the vertical line for $10 or 10 quantity, and we see that at $3 people will buy 10. So businesses, and we're not going to get into this, you'll learn about this senior year. If you want to major in business, you'll study this a lot. What businesses want to do is figure out how to maximize this situation. How do we get more people to buy it? That's the law of demand. Now, pay close attention to the difference between quantity demanded and demand. The law of demand, very simple. You'll buy more if it's cheaper. Well, if that was the only way to make people buy more of things, we would see that this creates a problem because then business would simply lower their prices until they all went bankrupt because at some point they can't make any money. And so nobody will buy their products. Why? It's too expensive. So how do we get products to be more valuable without decreasing the price? In other words, how do we get more people to buy it without lowering the price? So this graph here, I would draw this one again, new graph. We see our price, and you'll notice I try to keep this simple. We put $10 at the halfway point for price. and I only list P. You should learn that P equals the vertical. And on the horizontal, I put 10 at the midpoint for quantity. Remember, all the way in the bottom left-hand corner is 0 price and 0 quantity. And we have 3 D lines. D is the original demand line. And then something changes to cause either D1 or D2. Don't think up and down, think increase and decrease. All right. A change in demand, then, is caused by factors other than a change in price. Something happened that caused a change, and it wasn't the price of the good. Okay, here's our original price of $10. And what we see is at D, our original situation, at $10, people will demand 10 of this good. I hope that doesn't keep popping up, but if it does, you'll deal with it. At $10, they will keep demanding 10. Well, uh-oh, something happened. We don't know what. We know it wasn't price, though, because the price stayed $10. And now D1 tells us that people only want less than 10. All right, we have to figure out what that cause was. D2 shows us that, wait a minute, now there's a change and people want more than 10. They want more of a good even though the price didn't change. All right, well then the million-dollar question for businesses. What besides price affects consumer choices? What makes you buy more or less of something besides the price? All right, we have some factors of change. The first is income. Well, this is, again, common sense for you. As a consumer, a change in income is directly related to a change in demand for goods. So right now what I would do is I would be putting arrows on income and demand. And we should know that the arrows go the same direction because it's directly. In other words, as I make more money, and literally put the money sign, put the arrow. If I make more money, I will buy more stuff. You'll notice I have the Apple sign. It's kind of ironic because I am becoming an Apple junkie. If I make more money, I buy more stuff. That's obvious. If I make less money, I buy less things. So the first factor of change besides price is income. They don't make Apple cheaper. If I get a raise, I buy more stuff. The second is future expectations. In other words, we as consumers are always looking at what will or could happen in the future. Well, this depends on the change. It can be directly or indirectly related, and we'll get into examples of this later. Part of it is, what do you think will happen? So don't worry about that one too much. The third one is population. Population and demand are directly related. A change in population is directly, so as population increases, the demand for food increases. Again, this should feel like common sense. Tell me if you think that when we get to the end. We'll see. So, population is directly related. Consumer taste. In other words, what do people like? Okay? A change in consumer taste is directly related to a change in demand. In other words, the more people like Jared or Michael Phelps endorse Subway, whether you believe it or not, that increases the money Subway makes because more other people shop there. Why else would Subway pay Jared to come out and do that? Why would Jared get paid by Subway? Why would Michael Phelps get paid by Subway if it didn't create more demand? Well, they wouldn't do it. Subway, if they did that and paid that money, it would cost more money and they would lose business. This is why athletes become endorsement people, because it brings in business. Complementary goods. Complementary are things that work together. Goods that are bought and used together. A bunch of different examples. Chips and dip. French fries and burgers. Soda and chips. You notice I'm talking food. That maybe is a bad sign. Skis and ski boots. Those are things that are bought and used together. Well, I've listed a bunch of examples. Now the key is this. A change in the price of complementary goods is inversely related to a change in demand for the original good. Now this sounds complex. In other words, if I'm looking at the demand for an original good, if the change in the price of something I need with it changes, that's going to affect what I do. Gasoline and vehicles are the easy example. I need gasoline to drive a Humvee. As the price of gas goes up, what happens to my demand for a Humvee? Well, it goes down. Gas becomes more expensive. Humvees use a lot of gas. I can't afford a Humvee, so I stop buying it. Substitute goods. Goods used in place of each other. In other words, I can easily replace something with something. Subway with Jimmy John's. McDonald's, here's the food thing again. Geez, no wonder I need to work out more. Carbonis with Spiral. Coke with Pepsi. Those are the easy ones I use. A change in the price of substitute good is directly related to a change in the demand for the original good. In other words, I'm looking again at the original good. What happens to my alternatives will affect what I want with the original good. Coke and Pepsi. As the price of Coca-Cola goes up, usually I want Coca-Cola, right? What happens to the demand for Pepsi? Well, it goes up. Why? Because if price gets too expensive, I won't buy it. So if my original good is Pepsi, and I'm like, I like Pepsi, but the price of Coke keeps going up, I'm still going to buy more Pepsi. Well, what if I want Coca-Cola, and the price of Coca-Cola keeps going up? Well, I'm going to switch to Pepsi because it gets too expensive. It's easiest when you do this to think of extremes. If Coke is what I prefer and the price goes up 50 cents, I won't change. But if the price of Pepsi is $1 a can and the price of Coke is $10 a can, what will you do? You'll switch to Pepsi. Okay? That is the end of the demand lesson. Good luck.